I was 12 when I first learned I was the wrong gender for my family's legacy. It was career day at school, and I proudly told my class I would one day run Mitchell Manufacturing just like my father. That night, I overheard my parents talking. "She's got such a head for business," Richard, my mother, said. "You should see how she lights up when you talk about the company." My father's response was immediate. "It doesn't matter. The company goes to David. That's tradition. Girls don't run manufacturing companies." 15 years later, I stood in my brother's office, our father's old office, watching him sign the paperwork that would fire me from the company I'd given my life to. "Nothing personal, Emma," David smirked, sliding the papers across his desk. "But let's be honest, you're not cut out for this. Maybe start a cute little boutique. Something more feminine." I kept my face neutral as I signed, remembering every sacrifice I had made. The Stanford MBA, the countless late nights, the supply chain innovations that had boosted profits by 40% last year. None of it mattered. I had the wrong chromosomes. "Clear out your desk by end of day," David added, already turning back to his phone. "And Emma, Dad was right. Girls don't belong in manufacturing." I walked out with my head high, past employees who wouldn't meet my eyes, past the systems I built, which David had spent the last year dismantling in favor of his golf buddies' half-baked ideas. In my office, mine for one more hour, I packed up 15 years of work, photos, awards, business plans Dad had never read. And at the bottom of a drawer, I found something that made me smile for the first time that day. A list of every supplier, contractor, and logistics company Mitchell Manufacturing depended on, along with their contract renewal dates. David had never cared about the relationships I had built, the trust I had earned, the favors I was owed. A shadow fell across my doorway. Marcus Chen, head of logistics. His expression told me he knew exactly what had happened. "Need help with those boxes?" I shook my head. "I'm fine, Marcus. But remember that conversation we had last month about starting our own logistics company?" He nodded slowly. "You mean the one where you mentioned having enough capital to buy out 3 major shipping contractors?" I pulled up an email draft I prepared months ago when I first saw this day coming. "How would you like to be COO of Summit Logistics? Incorporated last week. Fully funded. Ready to start operations." His eyes widened as he scanned the business plan. "Emma, this could control the entire regional supply chain. If you got the right contracts." "You mean the ones up for renewal? The ones David doesn't even know are expiring?" Understanding dawned on his face. "You've been planning this." "For years," I admitted. "Why fight for a seat at their table when I can build my own?" Over the next 2 hours, more visitors arrived. Sarah from accounting passed over for a promotion in favor of David's friend. James from operations ignored when he warned about quality control issues. One by one, they accepted job offers from Summit Logistics. By the time security arrived to escort me out, my team was in place. My plan was in motion. David called after me from his office. "Goodbye, Emma. Some people just aren't meant for real business." I smiled, knowing it would infuriate him. "Goodbye, David. Give my best to Hansen Shipping. While you still can." The confusion on his face was priceless. That night, I sat in my home office, surrounded by the silly girl thoughts that would soon revolutionize regional logistics. My phone buzzed. Jack Hansen, CEO of Hansen Shipping, confirming our Monday meeting. I looked at the old photo on my desk. Dad standing proudly beside David, his hand on his son's shoulder. Me slightly off to the side, always edge out of the frame. "Girls don't run manufacturing companies," Dad had said. He was right. I wouldn't be running a manufacturing company. I'd be running the entire supply chain they couldn't survive without. Monday morning arrived with a flurry of panicked texts from David. I ignored them, focusing instead on the Hansen Shipping contract spread across my new conference table. "Emma, this is brilliant," Jack Hansen said, reviewing our proposal. "Real-time tracking, optimized routes, consolidated shipping lanes. This could cut costs by 30%. The same proposal I gave Mitchell Manufacturing last quarter," I said, before they dismissed it as overcomplicating things. "Their loss, our gain." Jack signed with a flourish. "Summit Logistics is now our exclusive regional partner." As if on cue, my phone buzzed again. I picked up. "What the hell did you do?" David's voice was shrill. "Hansen just canceled our contract." "Did they? How unfortunate. I heard they signed with some new logistics company. Summit something. You're behind this. Behind what, David? A better business model? Isn't that what you called real business? The stream of profanity that followed was cut short when I hung up. I had more meetings to attend. By Wednesday, we secured 5 more contracts. Thursday, we acquired the region's largest warehousing operation. Friday, we announced our new supply chain management system, the same one David had dismissed months ago. Mitchell Manufacturing stock dropped 15% today. Marcus reported, handing me my afternoon coffee. Investors are panicking over supply chain instability. Just wait until next week, I said. Phase 2 begins Monday. It was beautiful in its simplicity. We didn't just control shipping now, we were about to control raw materials. The contracts I had quietly cultivated over years were all coming due within weeks. David never saw it coming. But he would. Soon. Emergency board meeting, Sarah announced, skimming her tablet. Mitchell Manufacturing is in crisis. Unprecedented supply chain disruptions. Their words, not mine. I could picture it perfectly. David, pacing the office he stole, fumbling for excuses as furious board members demanded answers. He blamed everyone but himself, never realizing his own arrogance had created his worst nightmare. The next few weeks were a masterclass in strategic dismantling. Every supplier Mitchell Manufacturing approached, we offered a better deal. Every shipping route they tried to secure, we optimized a competing one. Piece by piece, the empire they took for granted crumbled. Then finally, the call I'd been expecting. Emma, my mother's voice was hesitant. We need to talk. I let the silence stretch. About? The company. Which one, Mom? Mitchell Manufacturing or Summit Logistics? Because only one of them is thriving. A pause. Your father, he never meet. Never meant what? I cut in, to dismiss every idea I had, to hand the company to David just because he was a man, to let him run it into the ground while he ignored every warning. More silence. Then softly, the board meeting is tomorrow. David, he's going to lose his position. The shareholders are furious. I almost laughed. Sounds like a personnel issue. Nothing to do with me. Please, Emma, he's your brother. Funny, he wasn't my brother when he was firing me and mocking my business ideas. I hung up, no regret, no second thoughts. But her words lingered, not because I felt any obligation to save David, but because tomorrow's board meeting wouldn't just mark my victory. It would determine whether I settled for winning or claimed total dominance. I picked up my phone. Jack, remember that expansion plan we discussed? Move it up. We announce it at 9 a.m. tomorrow. The next morning, I watched the Mitchell Manufacturing board meeting via video link, an easy arrangement when you control a company's entire communications infrastructure. David looked terrible. His usual crisp suit was wrinkled, his hair unkempt. He stood before the board, floundering as he tried to explain Mitchell's 40% drop in value. We're exploring alternative supply chain options, he stammered, reaching out to new partners. There are no new partners, a board member interrupted. Summit Logistics has locked up the entire regional network. They just announced a $200 million expansion. Face it, David, we're dead in the water. David tugged at his collar. Maybe we could reach out to Summit. Try to negotiate. The boardroom door opened. Oh, now you want to negotiate? Every head turned. I stepped inside, my Summit Logistics ID badge gleaming. Dad half rose from his chair. Emma, what are you doing here? I smiled, representing the only company in this room that actually knows how to run a business. David's face darkened. You planned this. You sabotaged us. I shook my head. No, David. I built something better. Something you could have had, if you hadn't been so convinced that girls don't belong in business. I laid out my offer. Fair, more than fair, really. Summit would absorb all employees, preserve the Mitchell name on key product lines, and ensure the company's legacy continued. Just not under David. All in favor? The board chairman asked. The vote was unanimous. Even Dad, looking resigned, raised his hand. David lurched to his feet. This isn't right. Dad, tell them. Dad's voice was heavy. It's over, son. He turned to me. Emma, I was wrong. About everything. I met his gaze without flinching. Yes, you were. Then I turned to leave, but paused. Oh, and David, don't bother packing your office. I had it cleared out this morning. Try not to feel too bad. Some people just aren't meant for real business. His own words thrown back at him. The perfect ending to a plan 15 years in the making. That evening, I sat in my real office, earned through skill, not chromosomes. Framed on the wall was my first act as CEO, Mitchell Manufacturing's stock certificate. Sarah appeared in the doorway. Your father is here. He looked older than I remembered. Smaller somehow. The company, he started, is thriving, I finished. No thanks to your outdated ideas about who should run it. He exhaled. I'm sorry. I arched a brow. For what? Not believing in me. Dismissing me? Handing the company to David without a second thought. Each accusation landed like a weight. For all of it, he admitted. For underestimating you. For thinking talent had anything to do with gender. I studied him, searching for insincerity. I found none. Well, I said finally, at least you're learning. He nodded. I am. Then, hesitating. That's actually why I came. I want you to meet someone. A young woman rolled in beside him, a wheelchair-bound engineer with sharp eyes and an air of quiet brilliance. Emma, this is Jessica Chen, Dad said, a manufacturing prodigy from MIT. I thought you should hear her out. I raised an eyebrow, and why is that? He actually blushed, because when I saw her proposals, I realized something. I remembered all the ideas of yours I never read, and I didn't want to make the same mistake twice. Jessica looked nervous but determined. Mr. Mitchell said you might be interested in my AI integration models for production efficiency. I smiled. I am, but first, tell me about yourself. Not your gender, not your disability, just your vision for the future of manufacturing. Her eyes lit up. As she launched into her ideas, I caught Dad watching us, pride and regret warring on his face. Later that night, Mom stopped by my office. I saw David today. How's customer service treating him? I smirked. She sighed. He's humbled, and he wanted me to give you this. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. Emma, I spent years believing I deserved success just because of who I was. You proved that success is earned. You built something incredible, and you beat me fair and square. I won't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I will say this. I see it now. I see you now. I'm proud of you. David asterisk asterisk. I exhaled slowly, folding the letter. I didn't need his pride. But maybe, just maybe, I'd appreciated it. Smiling, I turned back to my desk. There was still work to do. After all, this empire wasn't going to build itself. And now everyone knew exactly whose hands it belonged in. I read the letter twice, then picked up my phone. David, be in my office tomorrow, 8 a.m. sharp. Bring your customer service reports and any real ideas you've gathered from actually listening to our clients. The next morning he walked in. Gone was the overconfident CEO swagger. In its place was something quieter, humbled. Sit down, I said. Tell me what you've learned. For the next hour, David laid out a detailed analysis of customer complaints, supply chain inefficiencies, and possible solutions. He hadn't just done the work, he'd understood it. Not bad, I said when he finished. How would you like to head up our new customer experience division? His eyes widened. You trust me with that. Trust is earned, just like leadership. Just like respect. That's how this company works now. And it did. Over the next year, Mitchell Manufacturing became something neither Dad nor David had ever envisioned. Jessica's AI-driven production systems transformed our efficiency. David's customer-first strategies rebuilt our reputation. Summit Logistics remained an industry powerhouse. But the real transformation, that happened in the company's culture. Walk into any Mitchell Manufacturing facility now, and you'll find leadership built on talent, not tradition. You'll see Jessica mentoring a new generation of engineers, David working alongside her, learning instead of dictating, and Dad, semi-retired, but still watching with something between pride and regret. Your latest article's making waves, Marcus said one morning, tossing a magazine onto my desk. The cover showed me standing on the factory floor. The headline read, The Manufacturing Maven. How Emma Mitchell revolutionized an industry while breaking glass ceilings. Marcus grinned. Best part is the sidebar about our mentorship program. The Mitchell Future Leaders Program, my passion project. It opened doors for brilliant minds often overlooked due to gender, disability, or background. Like Jessica, who was now guiding pre-promising engineering students. Dad called it expensive charity at first, I mused, until he saw the innovations coming out of it. Speaking of Dad, Marcus gestured toward my office door. He stood there, holding a familiar leather portfolio, the same one that had once contained my business proposals, the ones he'd ignored. I found these while cleaning out my old office, he said quietly. Finally read them. They were brilliant, Emma. They still are. I'm sorry I couldn't see that sooner. I took the portfolio, flipping through the ideas that had built my empire. Want to hear my latest proposal? Expanding the mentorship program internationally. He sat down, eyes filled with something I'd never seen before. Respect. Tell me everything. And so I did. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't proving someone wrong. It's proving yourself right. Again and again. Until even the deepest prejudices crumble under the weight of undeniable success. David stops by my office every Friday now, not as the entitled hare he once was, but as someone who finally understands what real leadership means. You know what I realized, he said one afternoon. When Dad said, girls don't belong in business, he wasn't just wrong about you. He was wrong about business itself. It's not about gender or control. It's about vision, I finished. About building something that lasts. About recognizing talent, wherever you find it. He nodded. Thanks for teaching me that, even if your method was dramatic. I smiled, thinking back to the day I took his company from him. Some lessons are meant to hurt. On my office wall, my old termination papers still hang beside my stock certificates, but now they're surrounded by something even more important, photos of our diverse leadership team, of our mentees, of the future we're building. And in one, David and I stand side by side on the factory floor, not as rivals, but as leaders. Because the greatest victory isn't just proving someone wrong about you. It's helping them be right about everything else.
The autumn rain pattered against my car window as I pulled into my parents' driveway for our monthly family dinner. These dinners had become a ritual of humiliation over the past 5 years. Ever since I'd walked away from the proper career path my family had planned for me. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, adjusting my simple pearl earrings, a gift from my grandmother before she passed. At 36, I looked nothing like the corporate success story my sister Jessica embodied. No designer suits, no elaborate hairstyle, just clean professionalism and quiet confidence. The porch light flickered on automatically as I approached the door, probably triggered by one of the many smart home features Jessica had insisted on installing for our parents. Another display of her supposed success. "Oh, Emma's here," my mother's voice carried through the door before I could knock. The slight disappointment in her tone was familiar. I was always Emma. Never my successful daughter or my accomplished child. Those titles were reserved for Jessica. The door opened to reveal my sister in all her glory. Channel suit, perfectly styled hair. That practiced look of condescending concern she'd perfected since childhood. "Emma, you're actually on time for once," she smirked, air-kissing my cheek. "And in the rain, too. Still haven't replaced that old Honda." I smiled, hanging my coat in the foyer. "It gets me where I need to go." "I'm sure it does," she said with false sweetness. "Unlike my new Mercedes. Have you seen it? Company car, of course. One of the perks of being senior VP at Atlas Corp." Ah, there it was. The first brag of the evening, right on schedule. The dining room was warm and bright, set with Mom's best china. Another tradition meant to highlight the contrast between Jessica's achievements and my supposed failures. Dad sat at the head of the table, already nursing his usual scotch, while Mom fussed over the place settings. "Emma, dear," Mom called out, "we put you next to Aunt Sarah. I thought you two could discuss things. By things, she meant Aunt Sarah's recent divorce and subsequent career struggles. The failure corner, where they seated anyone who didn't meet their standards of success. Actually, I said quietly, I'll sit here. I pulled out a chair at the main part of the table, directly across from Jessica. My mother's eyebrows shot up, but she said nothing. So, Jessica began as the first course was served. I was just telling Mom and Dad about my promotion. Senior Vice President of Operations at Atlas Corp, youngest in company history. That's wonderful, I murmured, taking a sip of water. Of course, it's not just the title, she continued, warming to her favorite subject, herself. I'm overseeing the merger with Thompson Industries, leading the restructuring team, basically running the whole show while they search for a new CEO. Dad beamed with pride. That's my girl. Always knew you'd make it big. Unlike some people, Jessica added, shooting me a pointed look. Still doing that consulting thing, Emma? Or have you finally realized it's time to get a real job? Mom jumped in, ever the peacekeeper. Now, Jessica, I'm sure Emma is doing her best. Oh, I am, I said, my voice steady. How's the Thompson merger going? I heard there were some complications. Jessica's smile faltered slightly. Nothing I can't handle. We're announcing the final details next week. The board's very impressed with my leadership. Interesting, I said, cutting my salmon into perfect squares. And the tech integration? All sorted? Of course, she said quickly. Too quickly. Everything's proceeding exactly as planned. I nodded, saying nothing. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Mom jumped in with her usual nervous chatter about the neighbor's new landscaping. Actually, Jessica announced, clearly eager to reclaim the spotlight, I should tell you all my big news. The board called me in today for a special meeting. Here it comes. They're expanding my role. She practically glowed. Starting next month, I'll be overseeing all operational integration for both companies. It's practically a CEO-level position. Practically, I echoed. My sister's a nobody, Jessica bragged, turning to our parents. Well, I just got promoted at Atlas Corp. Can you believe it? 2 companies under my control. I set down my fork carefully, dabbed my lips with the napkin and smiled. Congratulations, Jessica. I'm the new CEO there. The silence was absolute. Jessica's wine glass stopped halfway to her mouth. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. Mom's nervous chatter died mid-sentence. What? Jessica whispered. Atlas Corp, I repeated calmly. The board appointed me CEO this morning. I start Monday. That's impossible, Jessica sputtered. I would have known. I'm senior VP. I'm in all the major meetings. The ones you're invited to, yes. I pulled out my phone and pulled up an email. Would you like to see the announcement? It goes out tomorrow morning. But as my direct report, I thought you should hear it from me first. Direct report? The color drained from Jessica's face as the implications sank in. Oh, and about the Thompson merger? I continued, my voice still pleasant. We should discuss those complications you mentioned, particularly the $300 million in undisclosed tech debt you seem to have missed in your due diligence. Dad's scotch glass hit the table hard. Emma, what exactly are you saying? I stood slowly, smoothing my simple black dress. I'm saying that tomorrow morning, Atlas Corp will announce its new CEO. The same person who's been quietly consulting for them for the past 5 years, restructuring their tech division and preparing for this exact moment. I turned to Jessica, the same nobody sister who's been watching you take credit for other people's work, manipulate reports, and nearly derail a billion-dollar merger. You can't, Jessica started. I can. I cut her off. And I will. Board meeting, Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. I picked up my purse and turned to our parents. Dinner was lovely, as always. Though next time, perhaps we could all sit at the main table. The walk to my Honda had never felt so satisfying. Behind me, through the dining room windows, I could hear Jessica's voice rising in panic, Mom's attempts at soothing, Dad's confused questions. But I wasn't done yet. Monday morning would bring more surprises, and Jessica's perfect world was about to shatter completely. The Atlas Corp headquarters gleamed in the early morning sunlight, its 60 floors of glass and steel reaching into the clear blue sky. I pulled my Honda into the CEO parking spot, right next to Jessica's Mercedes, and smiled at the security guard's double take. "Morning, Frank," I said, showing my new badge. "How's Sarah doing in college?" He beamed. "Great, Miss Thompson. That scholarship program you recommended, it changed her life." Inside, the lobby was buzzing with unusual energy. News of the CEO announcement had leaked, though not the specifics. Employees huddled in small groups, whispering theories and speculation. I caught fragments as I walked past. Heard it's someone internal. Jessica Thompson for sure. She's been telling everyone. Maybe that consultant who fixed the tech division. The executive floor was eerily quiet when I stepped off the elevator. Jessica's assistant, Madison, sat at her desk looking shell-shocked. She'd probably already seen the announcement email scheduled for 8:30 a.m. "Good morning, Madison," I said pleasantly. "Is my sister in yet?" "Why, yes, Miss Thompson. She's in her office. I mean, her current office." I nodded. "Please have her meet me in the CEO's office in 10 minutes. And Madison, you can call me Emma." The CEO's office suite was exactly as I remembered from my consulting days, all mahogany and leather, designed to intimidate rather than inspire. That would be changing soon. Right on cue, my phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. "We need to talk. Now." I settled behind the massive desk, opened my laptop, and waited. 3, 2, 1. The door burst open. Jessica stormed in, her perfect composure cracking around the edges. Her channel suit was slightly wrinkled, probably from a sleepless night. "What the hell is this?" She slapped a printout of the announcement email on my desk. "Some kind of joke." "Good morning to you too, Jessica. Please, sit down." "I will not sit down. Do you have any idea what you've done? I've spent years building my position here, cultivating relationships, proving myself, taking credit for other people's work." I interrupted calmly. "Hiding problems in the Thompson merger? Manipulating reports to make yourself look better?" She paled slightly but rallied. "You can't prove any of that." "Actually," I said, turning my laptop around, "I can. Would you like to see the evidence? The board has already reviewed it all, of course. It's part of why they chose me for CEO." "The board?" She laughed, but it sounded hollow. "I know everyone on the board." "They wouldn't. You know the old board," I corrected her. "The one that stepped down last month after the pension fund scandal. The new board? They're a bit more thorough." Jessica sank into a chair, her legs seemingly giving out. "How long have I been preparing for this?" 5 years. Ever since you took credit for my tech restructuring plan and got your first promotion." I leaned forward. Did you really think I was just some failed consultant all this time? That I didn't notice you using my strategies, my ideas, even my exact phrases in your presentations? I earned my position, she whispered, but the conviction was gone from her voice. No, you didn't. But here's your chance to earn something real. I pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. Your new position. Junior Operations Manager, reporting to the actual team that's been doing your work all these years. Junior? She looked like she might faint. You can't demote me. I'll resign first. Of course you can resign, I agreed. But then I'd have to include the full details of your creative accounting in the SEC filing. And I don't think your next employer would appreciate that. The intercom buzzed. Ms. Thompson? The board is ready for the morning meeting. Thank you, Madison. I stood, straightening my jacket. Come in, Jessica. I believe you have a presentation on the Thompson merger. The real numbers this time, please. The boardroom fell silent as we entered. The new board members, hand-picked for their expertise and integrity, watched with varying degrees of interest as Jessica stumbled through her presentation. Every misleading statement, every inflated number, every hidden problem was methodically exposed. And that, I concluded after she finished, is why we'll be restructuring the merger timeline. Teams have already been assembled to address the tech debt issues that were overlooked. Excellent work, Ms. Thompson. The board chair nodded. Both in uncovering these issues and in your previous consulting work that actually kept this company afloat. Jessica's head snapped up. Previous work. Oh yes, the chair smiled. Your sister's been the architect of every major successful initiative here for the past 5 years. Though I believe you took credit for most of them. The meeting ended with Jessica looking thoroughly defeated. As everyone filed out, I caught her arm. Weekly status meeting, my office, tomorrow at 9 a.m., I said quietly. Don't be late. And Jessica, wear something more appropriate for your new position. Channel suits aren't really junior management style. Back in my office, I began the real work. The Thompson merger needed saving, the tech division needed strengthening, and the corporate culture needed a complete overhaul. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Please call us. We need to understand what's happening. I smiled, remembering all those family dinners, all those subtle jabs, and not so subtle comparisons. Nothing to understand. I typed back. Just your nobody daughter doing what she does best, succeeding. The afternoon brought a parade of executives, all suddenly eager to meet the new CEO they'd overlooked for years. Each one had a story about how they'd always respected my work and never really agreed with Jessica's methods. Amazing how quickly people's memories change when power shifts. By evening, Jessica's nameplate had been removed from her executive office door. Her assistant Madison was being reassigned, promoted, actually, to work directly with me. And the Thompson merger team was already implementing the solutions I'd prepared months ago. As I packed up for the day, a final email arrived from Jessica. You won't get away with this. Family doesn't do this to family. I thought about all the times she'd undermined me, belittled me, stolen my work. About all the family dinners where she'd made sure everyone knew exactly how much of a nobody I was. You're right, I typed back. Family doesn't do this to family. Remember that next time you're tempted to take credit for someone else's work. See you at tomorrow's status meeting. Don't be late. The Honda started smoothly as I pulled out of the CEO parking spot. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove exactly why I deserved this position. And Jessica, she was about to learn what it really meant to earn your success. 6 months passed in a whirlwind of changes at Atlas Corp. The Thompson merger, properly restructured, had become a case study in successful corporate integration. Our stock price had risen 40%, employee satisfaction scores were at an all-time high, and the tech division was revolutionizing the industry. And Jessica? She'd survived. Barely. In her new role as junior operations manager. Every morning, I watched her Honda Civic. The Mercedes had been a company car, naturally, pull into the regular employee parking lot. Every week, she sat through status meetings, presenting actual data instead of manipulated reports. It was a Tuesday morning when everything changed again. I was reviewing quarterly reports in my office, now redesigned to be more collaborative than intimidating, when Madison buzzed in. "Your parents are here," she said, her voice careful. "They don't have an appointment, but—" I sighed. After 6 months of ignored calls and declined dinner invitations, they'd finally decided to take direct action. Send them in. They looked older somehow, less imposing than I remembered. Mom's designer outfit seemed forced. Dad's usually commanding presence diminished. They stood awkwardly just inside the door, taking in the changes to the office they'd once visited to praise Jessica's accomplishments. "Nice view," Dad attempted, gesturing at the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Better than the failure corner at dinner," I replied mildly. "Please sit." They settled onto the modern conference chairs. Gone was the intimidating leather furniture of the old regime. Mom clutched her handbag like a shield. "Emma," she began, "we've been trying to reach you. I've been busy. Running a company takes time. But you knew that, right? All those times you praised Jessica's 60-hour weeks while dismissing my consulting thing." Dad shifted uncomfortably. "About that, we may have been hasty in our judgments." Hasty. I pulled up a file on my laptop. "Let's review, shall we?" 5 years of family dinners where I was seated in the failure corner. Countless comments about getting a real job. The time you skipped my consulting firm's launch party to attend Jessica's promotion celebration. Hasty doesn't quite cover it. "We didn't know," Mom protested. "Jessica always said." "That's the problem." I cut in. "You never asked me. Never looked beyond the surface. Never questioned why Atlas Corp's success always seemed to align with my consulting contracts. And now?" Dad asked quietly. I turned my laptop around, showing them the company's latest financial reports. Now Atlas Corp is stronger than ever. The Thompson merger that Jessica nearly derailed. It's revolutionizing the industry. The tech division she claimed was worthless. It's our biggest growth sector. "And your sister?" Mom's voice was barely a whisper. "See for yourself." I pressed the intercom. "Madison, please ask Jessica to join us." A few minutes later, Jessica slipped into the office. Gone were the designer suits and perfect makeup. She wore business casual attire, her hair simply styled, her expression guarded. "Sit down, Jessica," I said, gesturing to the remaining chair. "Your quarterly review is due." She pulled out a folder. Actual paper, not the glossy presentations of her VP days, and began reviewing her team's progress. Real numbers, real achievements, modest but genuine success. "Thank you," I said when she finished. "Much better than last quarter. You're learning." Our parents watched this exchange in stunned silence. The power dynamic they'd known for 36 years had completely reversed. "One more thing," I added, pulling out another folder. "The board has reviewed your performance. They're offering you a promotion. Senior Operations Manager, leading the new regional office." Jessica's head snapped up. Really? You've earned it. I emphasized the word. With actual work this time. The position starts next month. In our Minneapolis office. Minneapolis? Mom gasped. But that's a fantastic opportunity, I finished. Unless you prefer to stay in your current position, Jessica? She shook her head quickly. No, thank you, I accept. After she left, our parents sat in continued silence until Dad finally spoke. We were wrong, he said simply. Yes, you were. Can we fix this? Mom asked. I leaned back in my chair, touching the pearl earrings. Grandma's last gift. That depends. Are you ready to actually see me? Not as Jessica's shadow, not as the family disappointment, but as who I really am. They nodded, looking almost childlike in their uncertainty. Then yes, we can try, starting with dinner. At my house this time. No failure corner, no comparisons, no judgments. Just family, learning to see each other clearly. That evening, after they left, I stood at my office window watching the city lights flicker to life. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Thank you. For the promotion, for the chance, for everything. You earned it, I replied. That's the difference. Another text, this time from Mom. Your home is beautiful, just like you. We're so sorry we didn't see it sooner. I smiled, touching the pearls again. Success, I'd learned, wasn't about corner offices or designer suits. It was about staying true to yourself, doing the work, and sometimes letting others learn their own hard lessons. Madison buzzed in one last time. Tomorrow's schedule is ready. Board meeting at 9, strategy review at 11, and the Thompson team presentation at 2. Thank you, Madison. Oh, and one more thing. Yes. Move the family photo from the failure corner to my desk. It's time to make some new memories. The city lights twinkled below, reflecting off the glass and steel of the building that had become my domain. Not through manipulation or false claims, but through hard work, patience, and the quiet confidence that truth eventually prevails. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just proving them wrong, it's teaching them to be better.
The conference room at Dad's office had never felt smaller. Miranda sat at the head of the table like she owned the place, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the mahogany surface. Mom perched beside her, that familiar look of disappointment etched across her face as she glanced at me. Dad stood by the window, arms crossed, looking every bit the successful real estate developer he'd been for 30 years. And then there was me, the daughter who'd somehow managed to disappoint them all. Let's get this over with, Miranda said, pulling out a stack of papers. Sarah, we've all seen the writing on the wall. Your little payment processing company has been hemorrhaging money for 3 years now. It's time to face reality. I took a sip of my coffee, saying nothing. The ceramic mug was warm against my palms, grounding me. Hemorrhaging is such a strong word, Mom chimed in, though her tone suggested she agreed completely. But sweetie, you have to admit you're in over your head. This was always going to be too complicated for you. 3 years ago, I'd started secure flow payment systems in a rented office space barely larger than a storage closet. While my family built strip malls and apartment complexes, I'd been fascinated by the invisible infrastructure of money, how it moved, how it was tracked, how it could be protected. They'd called it a phase. Said I was wasting my MIT degree on computer stuff, when I could have joined the family business. The numbers don't lie, Dad finally spoke, turning from the window. I've looked at your reports, Sarah. You're barely covering operational costs. No significant client acquisitions in 18 months. Your biggest contract is with what? A chain of dry cleaners. 3 chains actually, I corrected quietly. Dry cleaners, car washes, and small medical practices. Miranda laughed, a sharp sound that cut through the room. Oh, 3 whole chains. How impressive. Meanwhile, I've been expanding Dad's business into commercial development across 5 states. But sure, your dry cleaner clients are definitely comparable. I set down my coffee cup and folded my hands in my lap. The presentation folder Miranda had prepared sat unopened in front of me. I already knew what was inside. A buyout offer, probably insultingly low, with terms that would effectively erase my company from existence. Sarah, honey, this isn't an attack, Mom said in that overly gentle voice she used when she was about to say something cruel. We're family. We want to help you. Miranda has generously offered to take over SecureFlow, absorb it into the family holdings. You'd get a small payout, maybe a consulting position if you wanted. I'd have to think about the consulting part, Miranda interrupted, examining her nails. We'd need to restructure everything. Your systems are so outdated, Sarah. I mean, who even uses that kind of encryption architecture anymore? My jaw tightened slightly, but I kept my expression neutral. Miranda had a business degree from a state school and had learned everything she knew about commerce from Dad. She couldn't tell you the difference between SHA-256 and AES encryption if her life depended on it. The offer is generous, Dad continued. $200,000 for full ownership transfer. That's more than fair given the company's current valuation. I almost laughed. $200,000. My operating budget for security infrastructure alone was 3 times that annually. But they didn't know that. They'd never asked about the details. They saw the modest office, the small public client list, the lack of flashy marketing, and assumed failure. You've been at this for 3 years, sis. Miranda leaned forward, her voice dripping with false sympathy. 3 years of struggling, of barely keeping your head above water. Don't you want to finally relax? Maybe travel? Find a nice guy to settle down with? You're 32. The clock's ticking on more than just your business. Mom nodded enthusiastically. Miranda's right. You could focus on your personal life for once. Your cousin Jennifer is pregnant with her 3rd, you know. Don't you want that kind of happiness? The implication hung heavy in the air. Successful women got married and had children. Unsuccessful women built failing tech companies and stayed single. I need you to understand something. Dad walked over to the table, placing both hands on the surface as he leaned toward me. This isn't a negotiation, Sarah. I've been subsidizing your office rent for the past year. Did you think I didn't know? The building owner is a friend. He told me you've been late on payments 6 times. My stomach tightened. I had been late on payments because I'd been diverting every available dollar into R&D, into building systems they couldn't even begin to comprehend. The office rent was always paid eventually, but the delays had apparently been noted and reported. So here's what's going to happen. Dad straightened up. You're going to sign Miranda's papers today. Transfer ownership cleanly. Or I pull my support entirely, and you can explain to your landlord why next month's rent isn't coming at all. Dad, don't be so harsh, Miranda said, though her smile suggested she was enjoying every second of this. Sarah just needs time to process. This is her baby after all. Even if it's a failure, there's emotional attachment. There's no time for processing, Mom interjected. We have the family gala next weekend. The Hendersons will be there and their son Marcus just made partner at his law firm. It would be so much better if we could introduce Sarah as a consultant for the family business rather than a failed entrepreneur. I looked at each of them in turn. Miranda practically vibrating with anticipation. Mom already planning how to spin this to her social circle. Dad disappointed as always, ready to absorb another one of my mistakes into the family empire. Can I at least review the papers? I asked quietly. Miranda's smile widened. Of course. Take your time. We have all afternoon. She slid the folder across the table. I opened it slowly, scanning the contents. Asset transfer agreement. Non-compete clause preventing me from starting another payment processing company for 5 years. A consulting contract at $40,000 a year, barely enough to cover a modest apartment in this city. The non-compete is standard, Miranda explained, her tone condescending. We can't have you running off to start another failing venture that might compete with our newly acquired assets. It's just business, sis. I turned the pages, my expression carefully neutral. They'd valued my client contracts at almost nothing. The intellectual property, the real heart of SecureFlow, was listed as minimal value pending independent assessment. You'll notice we're being generous with the timeline, Dad added. 60 days to transition everything. That's 2 months of continued salary for you while Miranda's team takes over operations. My team is excellent, Miranda bragged. I've already been consulting with some people. We'll modernize everything, probably cut your operational costs by 40% just by eliminating redundancies. The redundancies she was referring to were likely the multiple security layers, the constant system audits, the encryption protocols that went far beyond industry standard. She'd gut the company's actual value in the name of efficiency, never knowing what she was destroying. Sarah, honey, you're being so quiet, Mom leaned forward. What are you thinking? I looked up from the papers. I'm thinking about what happens next. What happens next is you sign, we all hug, and we finally stop worrying about you, Miranda said brightly. Then you can come work in a real office with real support. Maybe you'll even learn something about how successful businesses actually operate. The condescension was so thick I could practically taste it. 3 years of being patted on the head, dismissed, treated like a child playing business while the adults did real work. There's a signing bonus, Dad pointed to a line in the contract. An additional $25,000 once the transfer is complete. That should help you get settled, maybe take a vacation before starting your consulting role. $225,000 total for a company I'd built from nothing. For technology they couldn't begin to understand. For systems that were currently processing. I stopped that thought. They didn't need to know. Not yet. The lawyers are standing by. Miranda checked her phone. We can have this executed within the hour. Clean, simple, done. Why the rush? I asked, my voice still calm. Rush. Miranda's eyes narrowed slightly. Sarah, this has been coming for 3 years. If anything, we've been too patient. Dad's been covering your rent. Mom's been making excuses to her friends about why her daughter's business never seems to grow. I've been watching you struggle when you could have just joined us from the beginning. You were always so stubborn, Mom sighed. Even as a little girl. Remember when you insisted on taking apart the computer instead of just using it like a normal person? That's exactly the problem, Dad added. You're so focused on how things work that you miss the bigger picture. Business isn't about understanding every tiny detail. It's about results, growth, profit. I placed my hands flat on the table, looking at the contract one more time. The terms were insulting. The valuation was absurd. The non-compete would effectively end my career in the field I'd spent a decade mastering. If I don't sign? I asked quietly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Then you lose everything anyway, Dad said flatly. Rent comes due in 8 days. Without my support, you're done. At least this way you walk away with something. And you preserve some dignity, Mom added. Wouldn't you rather tell people you sold your company than have it collapse in bankruptcy? Miranda leaned back in her chair, triumphant. Come on, sis. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You gave it your best shot. Sometimes our best just isn't good enough. There's no shame in that. The office door opened and Dad's assistant poked her head in. Mr. Chin? I'm sorry to interrupt, but there are some men here to see. She didn't get to finish. 2 men in dark suits walked past her into the conference room, and 1 woman followed behind them. They had that unmistakable bearing, federal agents. I recognized the look from my countless meetings over the past 2 years. Sarah Chin, the first man asked, though his eyes had already found me. Yes. Kept my voice level. He pulled out credentials. I'm Special Agent Morrison, Treasury Department, Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. This is Agent Rodriguez and Agent Kim. We need to speak with you about secure flow payment systems. The room went absolutely silent. Miranda's face had gone pale. Treasury Department? What is this about? Agent Morrison's expression was stern. Ma'am, we'll need you to step outside. This is official business with Ms. Chin. Now wait just a minute. Dad stood up, his voice taking on that authoritative tone he used when closing deals. This is my office and Sarah is my daughter. If there's some kind of problem... Sir, this doesn't concern you, Agent Rodriguez cut him off sharply. Ms. Chin, we need to discuss the unauthorized access attempts to your systems. We've detected multiple breaches originating from this location. My heart rate didn't change. I'd been expecting this, though perhaps not quite so dramatically timed. Breaches? I asked calmly. Someone has been attempting to access your federal banking systems integration portal. Agent Kim spoke for the first time, her voice crisp. The attempts originated from an IP address registered to this office building. Your security protocols flagged it and automatically reported to our monitoring systems. Miranda's hand had moved to her throat. Federal banking systems? Sarah, what are they talking about? I didn't answer her. Instead, I looked at Agent Morrison. When did the attempts occur? Beginning approximately 48 hours ago. He consulted a tablet. Multiple login attempts using administrative credentials that were clearly harvested from your systems. The perpetrator had internal knowledge of your architecture. Sarah, Dad's voice had lost its authority, replaced by something that might have been fear. What is he talking about? What federal banking systems? Agent Morrison turned to look at my father fully for the first time. Sir, are you not aware of what your daughter's company does? It processes payments for small businesses, Mom stammered. Dry cleaners and such. The three agents exchanged glances. Agent Rodriguez actually smiled, though it wasn't warm. Miss Chin, Agent Morrison addressed me again. Can you explain to your family the nature of SecureFlow's actual operations? I took a slow breath. SecureFlow Payment Systems is the primary payment processing infrastructure for the Federal Reserve's real-time payment system. We handle the encryption, routing, and security protocols for approximately 40% of all federal banking transactions in the United States. The silence that followed was absolute. Miranda's mouth had fallen open. Dad had actually stepped backward. Mom looked like she might faint. Miranda's voice was barely a whisper. That's not possible. We also provide security infrastructure for the Treasury Department's electronic federal tax payment system, I continued calmly. And we're the primary contractor for the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation's transaction monitoring systems. Agent Kim nodded. SecureFlow processes approximately $400 billion in federal transactions daily. The security breach attempts we detected were extremely serious. If successful, they could have compromised the entire federal banking infrastructure. $400 billion, Dad repeated as if the words made no sense. Daily. The dry cleaners are a cover, I explained, finally looking at my family. The public-facing clients are real, but they're less than 1% of our actual revenue. Everything else is classified federal contracts. We've been the primary contractor for FinCEN for 18 months. FinCEN, Agent Morrison added helpfully, is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. We handle anti-money laundering investigations, counter-terrorism financing, and financial intelligence. SecureFlow's systems are integral to our operations. Miranda's hands were shaking. But, the office. It's so small. You said you were barely covering costs. The real operations aren't conducted from that office, I said. That's just the public face. Our actual data centers are in secure facilities across 3 states. The operational costs I was barely covering? Those were just the expenses for maintaining the public persona. The late rent payments, Dad's voice was hollow. You said. I was diverting funds to expand our federal contracts, I confirmed. The rent was always paid, just not on the schedule you expected. Because frankly, compared to our actual operating budget, that office rent was trivial. Agent Rodriguez pulled out his own tablet. The breach attempts were sophisticated. Someone with inside knowledge of your system's architecture tried to access federal transaction records. We need to know who had access to your credentials. I pulled my laptop from my bag, the one I'd brought for the meeting, though not for the reasons my family had assumed. A few keystrokes brought up the security logs. The attempts came from this IP address. I showed the screen to the agents. It's registered to Chin Development Corporation, my family's real estate company. All 3 agents turned to look at Miranda. Her face had gone from pale to gray. I was just trying to see. Sarah said she couldn't share client information, but I thought if I could just look at the systems I could understand. You attempted to hack into federal banking systems. Agent Kim's voice was ice. Do you have any idea what you've done? I hired someone. Miranda's voice rose in panic. A cybersecurity consultant. I just wanted to see what Sarah was hiding. I thought if I could prove the company was worthless, she'd sell it to me without a fight. I didn't know it was. I thought it was just payment processing for small businesses. Agent Morrison's expression had hardened. You hired someone to breach a federal contractor's security systems. That's a federal crime, Ms. Chin. Multiple federal crimes, Agent Rodriguez corrected. Computer fraud, attempted theft of government property, conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Dad. Miranda turned to our father, desperate. Dad, fix this. You know people you can... Someone you hired, I interrupted calmly. Was it David Brennan? Goes by Data Ghost on certain forums. Miranda's eyes widened. How did you? Because he's an FBI informant, Agent Kim said flatly. He's been working with us for 6 months. The moment you approached him about hacking a federal contractor, he reported it. We've been monitoring this entire operation. The room seemed to tilt. Dad grabbed the back of a chair for support. Your consultant, I explained to Miranda, immediately contacted the authorities. Then he fed you just enough information to think you were succeeding, while every single action was documented and reported. The FBI has recordings of every conversation you had with him. This is insane, Mom's voice was shrill. Sarah, tell them this is a misunderstanding. Tell them Miranda didn't mean. I can't tell them anything except the truth, I said quietly. Miranda attempted to compromise federal banking infrastructure. The Treasury Department doesn't care about family dynamics. Agent Morrison pulled out handcuffs. Miranda Chin, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit computer fraud and attempted unauthorized access to federal systems. No. Dad moved forward, but Agent Rodriguez blocked him. Sir, step back. Don't make this worse. Miranda was crying now, mascara running down her face. Sarah, please. Tell them I didn't know. Tell them it was a mistake. We're sisters. I watched as Agent Morrison read her rights. The same sister who'd spent 3 years mocking my failed business. Who'd convinced our parents I was incompetent. Who'd tried to steal my company for $200,000. The investigation will extend to anyone who assisted or had knowledge of the breach attempt, Agent Kim said, looking at Dad. Mr. Chin, were you aware of your daughter Miranda's activities? No. She said she was doing research. Due diligence before the acquisition. I didn't know she was. Did you provide funding for this research? Agent Rodriguez asked. Dad's silence was answer enough. We'll need to examine Chin Development Corporation's financial records, Agent Morrison said as he cuffed Miranda. And Mr. Chin, you should contact an attorney. You may be facing charges as an accessory. Mom had started crying too, but it was the quiet, shocked kind of crying. The kind that happened when your entire worldview shattered in under 10 minutes. Sarah, she whispered. Why didn't you tell us? I tried, I said simply. 3 years ago when I started the company, I explained that I was building federal-grade security infrastructure. You said it sounded boring. You asked when I was going to do something important. Agent Kim began escorting Miranda toward the door. My sister was still crying, still calling my name, still begging me to fix this. The federal banking systems Miranda attempted to access, Agent Morrison said, packing up his tablet, process transactions that impact every American citizen. If she had succeeded or if the breach had been carried out by actual hostile actors using the access she was trying to create, the economic damage would have been catastrophic. I understand, I said. We'll need you to come to our office for a full debrief, he continued. And we'll need to discuss additional security measures for your systems. Of course. I'm scheduled for a review meeting next week anyway. We can combine them. He nodded. We'll be in touch about timing. He paused at the door, looking back at my parents. Your daughter is one of the most valuable security contractors in the federal government. The work she does protects the financial infrastructure of the entire country. You should be proud. Then they were gone, taking Miranda with them. The conference room felt cavernous now. Just me, Mom, and Dad, and the paperwork for a buyout that had become completely meaningless. Dad sank into a chair. $400 billion. Daily. On average, I confirmed. It fluctuates based on market activity. The federal contract revenue alone must be. He couldn't even finish the sentence. Last year's revenue was $1.2 billion, I said quietly. Profit margin of about 40% after expenses. This year we're projected to exceed $1.8 billion. Mom made a small sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. The company valuation, Dad's voice was mechanical, shocked. If Miranda had succeeded in buying it for $200,000. The actual valuation is somewhere north of $8 billion, I said. though it's hard to price accurately because of the classified nature of the contracts. Most of our value is in intellectual property and federal relationships that can't be easily transferred. 8 billion, he repeated numbly. I stood up, gathering my things. I need to go. I have a meeting with the Department of Homeland Security in 2 hours about expanding our cryptocurrency monitoring systems. Sarah, wait. Mom reached out, though she didn't actually touch me. We didn't know. You have to understand, we didn't know. You didn't ask, I corrected gently. For 3 years you didn't ask. You saw what you expected to see. A failed business, a disappointing daughter. You never once asked for details about what I was actually building. We thought we were helping, Dad's voice cracked. The buyout, the consulting position. We thought we were saving you from failure. You thought you were acquiring a failed asset for pennies on the dollar, I said. Miranda knew exactly what she was doing. She wanted to steal my company and she was willing to break federal law to do it. The signing papers were still on the table. I picked them up, looking at the insulting terms one last time. $200,000, I said softly. For a company worth $8 billion. For systems that process nearly half of all federal banking transactions. For infrastructure that protects the financial security of 330 million Americans. I set the papers down and pulled out my phone. A few taps brought up my banking app. I showed Dad the screen, the business account balance. This is just the operating account for the public-facing side of the business, I explained. The account you thought represented my entire company's finances. The balance showed $47 million. Mom actually whimpered. The actual operational accounts are managed through Federal Reserve banking systems, I continued. They're not visible on consumer banking apps. That's where the real money is. Sarah, please. Dad stood up, and for the first time in my life I saw him look genuinely humble. We made a terrible mistake. We can fix this. As a family. Miranda is going to federal prison, I interrupted quietly. The minimum sentence for what she did is 5 years. Probably longer, given the scope and sophistication of the attempt. You'll likely face charges as an accessory if they can prove you funded her consultant. But we're family, Mom pleaded. Surely you can talk to them, explain that we didn't understand. I can't interfere with a federal investigation, I said. And I won't. Miranda didn't just try to steal from me. She tried to compromise systems that protect the entire U.S. banking infrastructure. That's not a family matter. That's a national security issue. Dad's shoulders sagged. What happens now? Now. I picked up my bag. Now I go to my meeting with DHS. You call attorneys, very expensive ones. And you start preparing for what comes next. Which is, he asked. Federal investigation into Chin Development Corporation. Forensic accounting to determine what you knew and when. Possible charges. Definitely publicity. I headed toward the door, then paused. Oh, and you should probably prepare for the lawsuits. Lawsuits? I'm a federal contractor with security clearance. Miranda's attempt to breach my systems likely violated the terms of my government contracts. I'll need to sue Chin Development Corporation to demonstrate that I'm taking appropriate action to protect federal interests. It's standard protocol. Mom's face went white. You're going to sue us? I'm going to sue Dad's company, yes. For enabling an attempted breach of federal security systems. My attorneys estimate the damages at around $500 million, though we'll probably settle for much less. 500, Dad couldn't even finish. It's not personal, I said calmly. It's procedure. When a family member of a federal contractor attempts to compromise classified systems, the contractor has to demonstrate absolute commitment to security. That means cutting all ties and pursuing maximum damages. I opened the door, then looked back one last time. For what it's worth, I said softly, I really did want you to be proud of me. I wanted to build something important, something that mattered. I wanted to show you that I could succeed on my own terms in my own field. We would have been proud, Mom sobbed. If we'd known. If you'd known I was successful, you'd have been proud, I corrected. But you were perfectly happy to be disappointed when you thought I was failing. That tells me everything I need to know. Dad's voice was barely a whisper. Can you ever forgive us? I considered the question honestly. Maybe eventually. But first, Miranda needs to face the consequences of her actions. You need to understand the magnitude of what almost happened. And I need to focus on my actual work, the work you thought was worthless. The gala, Mom said suddenly, desperately. Next weekend. You could come explain to everyone what really happened. Show them how successful you are. I won't be at the gala, I said. I'll be in Washington briefing members of the Senate Banking Committee on cryptocurrency regulation. But I'm sure you'll have plenty to talk about with the Hendersons. I stepped into the hallway, leaving them in the conference room with the worthless buyout papers and the shattered remains of their assumptions. My phone buzzed. A text from Agent Morrison. Your sister is being processed. We'll need your statement by tomorrow. Also, the director wants to thank you personally for your cooperation with the monitoring operation. I'd known for 3 weeks that Miranda was trying to hack my systems. The FBI had contacted me immediately when Brennan reported her approach. We'd turned it into a sting operation, documenting every step while she thought she was getting closer to her goal. Another text came through, this one from my actual office, the secure facility where my real team worked. Meeting with DHS confirmed for 2 p.m. The cryptocurrency monitoring expansion looks good for approval. Also, congratulations on whatever just happened. The Treasury Department press release is already making waves. I smiled slightly. The press release would explain that a major security breach attempt had been thwarted, that a federal contractor's sister had been arrested, that the systems protecting America's banking infrastructure had held firm. By tomorrow, every news outlet in the country would know that the federal government's banking security was protected by a small company called SecureFlow. My phone would ring constantly with interview requests, contract offers, and probably a few marriage proposals from people who'd never heard of me 24 hours earlier. And somewhere in a federal holding cell, Miranda would be realizing that the failing business she tried to steal was actually one of the most critical pieces of America's financial infrastructure. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside, leaving behind the family that had spent 3 years telling me I wasn't good enough, smart enough, successful enough. They'd finally learned the truth. It just came 20 minutes too late and cost them everything. As the elevator descended, I pulled up my schedule for the week. Senate briefing. New contract negotiations with the Department of Defense. A keynote speech at a cybersecurity conference. And somewhere in there, I'd need to meet with my attorneys about the lawsuit against Dad's company. It was going to be a busy week. But then again, running a company that processed $400 billion in federal transactions daily was never boring. The elevator reached the ground floor. I stepped out into the lobby where my security detail was waiting. 2 former Secret Service agents who'd been assigned to me after my security clearance had been elevated 6 months ago. Miss Chin, the lead agent, nodded. The car is ready. We should leave now to make your DHS meeting. Thank you, Marcus. As we walked toward the armored sedan, I caught sight of my reflection in the lobby's glass walls. The same woman who'd been sitting in that conference room 20 minutes ago, being told her business was worthless and her life was disappointing. Except now everyone knew the truth. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting angry. Staying quiet, building something extraordinary, and letting the world discover your success at exactly the right moment. Or in this case, letting the Treasury Department make the announcement for you. The car door closed behind me and we pulled away from the building. Through the tinted windows, I could see Dad's office on the 15th floor, where he and Mom were probably still sitting in shocked silence, trying to comprehend how completely they'd misunderstood their own daughter. My phone rang. Unknown number, but the caller ID showed a Washington, D.C. area code with a government prefix. Sarah Chin, I answered. Miss Chin, this is Senator Walsh's office. The senator would like to discuss your testimony before the Banking Committee next week. She's particularly interested in your insights on cryptocurrency regulation and federal payment infrastructure. Of course. I'm available Thursday afternoon. Excellent. We'll send over the details. And Miss Chin? The senator wanted me to tell you that your work protecting our financial systems hasn't gone unnoticed. She's planning to introduce legislation to expand federal funding for cybersecurity contractors like yourself. I appreciate that. Thank you. The call ended. Outside the window, the city scrolled past. Thousands of businesses, millions of transactions, all protected by systems that my family thought were worthless. Another notification popped up on my phone. A news alert. Federal contractor's sister arrested in banking security breach attempt. Inside the secret company protecting America's money. The story was already viral. By tomorrow everyone would know. The investors who'd ignored my pitch meetings. The contractors who'd assumed I was too young or too female to handle serious security work. The family friends who'd smiled sympathetically when they asked about my little business. They'd all know. But more importantly, Miranda would know. Sitting in federal custody, facing 5 to 10 years in prison, she'd have plenty of time to think about the company she tried to steal for $200,000. The company worth $8 billion. The company that protected the financial security of an entire nation. The company her failing little sister had built from nothing while everyone around her assumed she was destined for failure. The car merged onto the highway heading toward the airport. The DHS meeting was in Washington, which meant flying on the government jet they'd assigned for my use. Another perk of being a critical federal contractor. I leaned back in the leather seat and allowed myself a small smile. 3 years of being dismissed, belittled, and patronized. 3 years of watching Miranda take credit for mediocre accomplishments while my actually revolutionary work was ignored. 3 years of being the family disappointment. And now, in one afternoon, everything had changed. Not because I'd gotten angry or defensive. Not because I'd bragged or shown off. But because I'd stayed quiet, built something extraordinary, and let the truth reveal itself at exactly the right moment. Sometimes that's all it takes. The quiet ones aren't always failing. Sometimes they're just building empires no one else can see yet. And when the Treasury Department comes knocking, everyone finally learns the truth.